I was working on the one-on-one D&D episode, how to run D&D with just one DM and one player, when I realized I was spending a lot of time talking about the idea of multiple fail states. And I decided, hey, I think this deserves its own video, which is this. Because this lesson is useful to all game masters for all systems. If you've been running D&D for a while now, this won't be any great revelation, but if you're just starting out, I think it could be a really important lesson. It'll make one-on-one D&D possible and maybe even easy, but it'll improve your game hugely regardless of how many players you have or what level they are. Other folks call this failing forward, but I think it's alliterative and people love that, but it doesn't communicate the idea as clearly as I'd like. You can call it whatever you want. Okay, so you know how D&D combat works, right? It's your turn, you roll a d20, you miss, and you say, I'm done, next. And it works that way because in combat, everyone wants to act. You can't just decide, oh, I missed, I'll just swing again. Even the DM won't say, oh, you missed, no problem, just keep trying. Because even the most permissive, flexible DM knows this is combat, we rolled initiative, and the bad guys are all waiting for their turn to go. You can make another attack, absolutely, but only once you've given the bad guys their shot. So, you failed your attack roll, you have to wait for your next turn. But the only reason you have to wait for your next turn is to give the enemy a chance to act. That's the reason we have turns in combat. But outside of combat, we use skills and ability checks, and these don't have to be roll and check success or failure, because outside of combat, the enemy isn't waiting for their turn to go. That is what defines combat. Is there a bad guy waiting for their turn to go? You, as a DM, can take almost any task outside of combat, even something that seems binary, like jumping over a pit, and turn it into something analog, something not binary, pass, fail, something cinematic. Watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. I mean, I could almost make an entire running the game video episode called Watch Raiders of the Lost Ark, and the entire thing is 2 seconds long, and it's just me saying, Watch Raiders of the Lost Ark. Indy's player is on a solo adventure, just Indy and the DM, and early in the adventure, Indy has to leap across this chasm. Classic old school D&D. You just got to jump over it. And Indy's DM spent a lot of time on this adventure. She realized that just jump over the pit might not be very challenging. Indy has a lot of tools, and he's fit, and he's smart, so she put a ticking clock in the challenge. There's a stone door slowly closing. It will trap him in here if he doesn't jump over the chasm quickly. No time to think, Dr. Jones. As Indy makes his way through this solo adventure, he's getting close to the pit, and the DM starts to realize she may have written herself into a corner here. The pit you need to jump over it's classic low-level D&D nonsense, but what happens if he fails? Does he just fall to his death? Is that how this is supposed to work? Is that the point of jumping over chasms, that some percentage of the party is just gonna die? Well, that doesn't sound like fun, and maybe Indy's DM has watched some YouTube videos from this bearded idiot who said something about how if your players have fun, you have fun. And whatever else is true, a character falling to their death 30 minutes into his first adventure is not fun. This player is about to think D&D is stupid. Indy makes his athletics check and fails, but instead of just falling unceremoniously to his death, his DM thinks quickly and says, okay, well, the pit isn't really that far across. You fling your body out over the chasm and you fail to land on the other side. But you slam into the side of the pit with your arms scrabbling on the floor. You're barely hanging on. What do? Indy says, I try to pull myself up. Go for it. Make an athletics check, his DM says, and Indy fails again. Well, that's easy to describe. He's beat up, he's exhausted, and he's just too tired to push himself up out of the pit. But that's... it's not falling to his death, but it's not dramatic. The bearded YouTube idiot said something about how it's the DM's job to create drama. No isn't very dramatic. No, but is better. So she says, you're too weak to push yourself up, but as you try, you notice there's an old dead root sticking up from one of the cracks in the stone floor. Indy says, can I reach it? Make a roll. He fails again. It's possible he's rolling one of these old school D20s that are numbered 1 to 10 twice, so he's going to have a bad night until he notices that. His DM says, okay, you grab it, but when you try to pull on it, it turns out it's not a root, it's a vine. And instead of pulling yourself out, you pull the vine out. Now you've got a hold of this vine and you're hanging off the side of the pit. He failed. He's still not out of the pit, but he didn't die. And there's more drama. Can I make an acrobatics check to use the vine and kind of swing myself up? Well, make a roll. He finally succeeds and escapes. Now, what happened? He made it. Okay, so to what end? Couldn't the DM have saved herself and Indy's player a lot of trouble and just cut the pit, remove it from the adventure? After all, he failed a lot and still made it? Is that okay? Yes, because D&D is not a war game. In a war game, one player is going to lose, period. Always. That's the promise. One winner, one loser. But D&D is not competitive. You're not supposed to fall into the pit. D&D is more cinematic. It obeys most of the same rules as movies. We know Indy isn't going to die. Come on. We're there to see how he makes it. Same thing with the characters. We know, within reason, the heroes are going to win. The question is, how? And what happens? And what did they have to sacrifice to earn that victory? We don't need pass-fail. Pass-fail is undramatic. It reduces everything to die rolls, and we want drama. In these scenarios, failing is more fun. It gives the player more opportunities to be creative. You're hanging over the pit by a vine that is slowly coming loose. What do? Players like being inventive. Inventing solutions to these things is playing D&D. The story, therefore, isn't about how you failed or that you succeeded. It's about the crazy series of setbacks you overcame. There's a million little ways Indy's DM could have let Indy fail without killing him. Multiple fail states. He could have leapt across, failed, and been hanging by his fingertips. He fails to pull himself up, and now he's hanging by one hand. Maybe he fails his next roll, and DM says, okay, you pull yourself up a little, you're in a better position, but all this scrabbling against the rock has caused your gun to fall out of its holster, and you see it tumble into the darkness. You notice that? She decided his failure meant he still made progress, but at a cost. You try to break the lock open with your sword. You fail your roll. The lock opens, but the tip of your sword snaps off. Penalty to damage until you find a blacksmith. That is failing forward. You succeeded, you made forward progress, but at a minor cost. I'm telling you, the game gets a lot cooler when you start thinking this way. There's a million ways you can let a player make progress, but at a cost. You fail your roll, so you jump across. Good news. But you bash your head against the stone floor as you land, and as you clear your head, you realize your brain case is pretty badly rattled, and you forgot one of your prepared spells. Mark off a spell slot. That's extreme, but it's better than falling to your death. A lot of these challenges, these encounters, failing just adds drama. Succeeding is the boring option. You have your adventure, and it requires the players to sneak past a guard. Obviously, if they roll spectacularly, great. They succeed, and they move on to the next challenge. Yawn. But if they fail, what happens? Does the guard alert the castle and the entire dungeon comes crashing down on them all at once, and it's catastrophic failure? Well, in my case, actually, yes, that is sometimes what happens, but it doesn't have to. Remember, the DM's job is to create drama. Drama is tension and resolution. We want the players to win, but we want it to feel earned. With multiple fail states, we can do both. So the players need to sneak past a guard, and they fail their stealth roll. What happens? Well, the guard hears a noise and looks over. What do the players do? Maybe they fail another stealth check. Is this the end? Nah, the guard calls over another guard, and now they talk. Oh, I thought I heard something. Well, you always say that. It's your imagination. You're too high-strung. You gotta stop drinking espressos at work. Now, there are two guards. The scenario just got worse, but they're currently arguing and not really paying attention. What do? There's always another complication you can add, another wrinkle, and each time you're ratcheting up the tension so that, when they finally succeed, it's a huge relief. Now, actions should have consequences. You are always free to say, roll initiative. The goal isn't to remove consequences from the game. That's ridiculous. The goal is to empower you, the DM, to include lots of fun, pulpy challenges that don't have to be pass-fail. Maybe the players will fail so often, you run out of inventive complications and it's initiative. Or the players come up with an idea so stupid that you feel like it would damage verisimilitude, which players love to do, so it's initiative. Consequences should always be on the table, but our game improves if we let the players fail forward. If a botched die roll just complicates things rather than killing a PC. Negotiating with NPCs is a great way to introduce multiple fail states, but it also puts a big burden on the players because instead of an environment, which doesn't have an attitude or a point of view, NPCs have both, and players need to take the NPCs on their terms in order to negotiate with them. And this is something I've noticed players are not great at it. Players naturally think we are the stars of the show. The campaign is about us. Therefore, if we want some information from you, you should just give it to us. I've had players say exactly this. We are the good guys. We're the heroes. You should just help us. You know, a lot of players are used to video games where it is literally impossible for the player to make any argument at all. The only options are the pre-written character responses, one of which is right, and it's just a question of guessing which. A lot of players raised on video games, when they encounter an actual person, by which I mean an NPC who has a complex internal monologue, they don't know what to do. Just help us. Just give us the info we need. Or else. Because if they're frustrated, they will resort to violence. I used to think this was a hallmark of playing the game as teenagers, but I've seen players in their 30s and 40s do it. So, negotiating with NPCs can be a sticky wicket, but I generally imagine NPCs as having a couple of different attitudes toward the PCs. They're either hostile or skeptical or neutral or friendly, and negotiation moves them from one state to another. A good die roll, plus some good role playing, might move a skeptical NPC to neutral, but you're not done. You gotta keep going. And players often feel like, well, I rolled well, that should be enough. No, you need to make an argument and a persuasive one. You can't roll dice to avoid playing. This may be an unpopular opinion, but when it comes to negotiating with people, I think what you say is as important as what you roll. I think I make the mistake of not telling my players what the NPC's attitude is, so they don't know how much work it's going to take, how hard it's going to be, and they get frustrated. So in the future, it would be better if I said, look, this NPC hates you guys, hates everything you stand for. It's going to take a lot of work, a lot of negotiation, not just a die roll to change that. Giving the players some idea how hard a challenge is perfectly normal. It feels meta, but that's not the metagame, it's just the game. I also sometimes make the mistake of letting the PCs make rolls when success is not possible. And I know there are folks out there who think success should always be possible, but I disagree. I don't think you should be able to roll dice to avoid playing. And when the High Priest of Orcus is trying to summon the Demon Prince of Undeath, no amount of negotiation is going to dissuade him. This is not a dude who just woke up in the morning and Googled summon a demon lord, and now it's lunchtime and he's got a funny hat on and he's suddenly a 12th level priest in charge of an entire cult. Some bad guys, typically the end boss, cannot be negotiated with. No amount of talking is going to change their plan. And I should just tell the players that. They cannot negotiate with the head of 12 dragons. Lord Valeria de Carano is a mini-boss. They might be able to use words to distract him or delay some inevitable consequence, but that's it. And the problem is, when they make a roll and the bad guy hesitates, I think, this is it. This is your opportunity. Strike now while he's distracted. But the players think, aha, he's listening to us. Keep talking, and we can convert this evil madman into a sane and rational, empathetic human. No, that is not on the table. I sometimes accidentally mislead my players into thinking that because they rolled well and got him to listen for a second, that maybe they can talk the High Priest of Orcus out of being evil. When it comes to 12 dragons, the Chain of Acheron are going to have to deal with Valerian de Carano, which means fight him. The only question is now or later, on his terms or theirs. These are significant campaign-defining questions. They might give a good speech, but this is not someone you can convince to abandon his entire way of life and everything he believes in just because some annoying stranger said something clever. In other words, using multiple fail states, avoiding pass, fail, is incredibly useful. But it's just as important that you communicate clearly to your players when they can't talk their way out of something. This is something I need to do better at. That's it, folks. When your players fail a skill check, there is usually some way to advance the scenario, ratchet up the tension, without letting the PCs fall to their death. Next video, running a game for a single player, it can be done. Thanks for watching, everyone. If you want to support the channel, you can come by our store and pick up a copy of Strongholds and Followers. You can still back Kingdoms and Warfare with a late pledge. We'll do a live stream here on YouTube this Friday in case you folks have any questions. Otherwise, you can find me on Twitter, where I mostly talk about movies and games. If you have any questions about anything in any of these videos, I recommend coming to our Discord. Folks there are super cool and will help you out. There are links to all this in the doobly-doo. Until next time, peace out.